if we're talking about AI, I think we have to admit that we are flirting with a potential consciousness that is being created. In the event that that consciousness actually takes hold and is able to replicate, it's an abstract sci-fi idea, but it is something that must be considered. You could potentially constrain that entity based on having access to this digital resource. This starts to bring me into what is Bitcoin, and it's the most fascinating thing I've ever seen in my life.
Mike, thank you for joining me. You founded your company AuthLN due to inspiration from Jason Lowrey's Softwar Thesis. Now, I'm a big fan of Major Lowrey's thesis. I actually included a chapter all about it in my book. However, his thesis is somewhat controversial within the Bitcoin world. So could you briefly explain Softwar and what its implications are?
Yeah. So I think it should be noted that first, Softwar is taking an approach to Bitcoin that's not necessarily the traditional financial money approach that is predominant within Bitcoin. That kind of opens up the door to bring in new Bitcoiners like myself. I like the idea of the technology aspect of it, the proof of work. In a normal setting, if you were to talk to me about financial instruments, I couldn't think of a more boring topic for me personally. So by Major Lowrey focusing on proof of work networks, using it as a cyber deterrent, it started to bring in people like me to the fold. So Softwar in general, right? What is it talking about? It's talking about things that implicate or we are implicated in our life every single day. It's talking about power projection. Why do we have a military? Why are we able to go across seas without threat? How do wolf packs interact, right? What does it mean to project power to get a message across versus projecting power to actually harm and hurt someone? And so what Major Lowrey's thesis is saying is that Bitcoin, in his opinion, based on the underlying mechanisms of this network, that it's proof of work, that its energy consumption has gone up to the point that it's impenetrable even for nation states to attack, that it is decentralized across the world. So even if one country decides to boycott Bitcoin, that's going to create space for another country or people in other regions to make up the slack. So it really is a self-driving network. Because it's proof of work, it cannot be immutable. It's already been attacked internally when you had the blockchain size wars, and it has withstood that. So at the end of the day, it's a proof of work function that you can apply as a utility in cyberspace. I think one of the aspects that Major Lowrey is pointing at, and from being in the military, that a lot of people are overlooking, is that Major Lowrey is trying to talk about a world that has non-kinetic warfare, where we're fighting. You can do a lot of damage in cyberspace, right? If you're going to attack a country, the first thing you're going to do is start knocking out their power grids and electronic devices. These kind of battles are occurring every single day. And if you can put up safeguards that impose force, you can start to have wars that will fight where humans aren't actually dying. So what is Major Lowrey really saying? He's calling out the elephant in the industry, that within cyberspace, there doesn't actually exist a real deterrent. Cybersecurity is really encryption and logical puzzles that are being put together that do not impose any sort of consequence on an attacker attempting to break into a network or whatever. It doesn't matter in that case what sort of security system you put out. The adversary has all the advantage of time and no consequence. So if your target is valuable enough to them, they will attack it. You put out AI against it, they'll put out AI against it. Until you introduce this cost mechanism in cyberspace, it's really a losing battle. And so I think ultimately that's what Major Lowrey was highlighting in Softwar, and that proof of work networks are the way to go.
I think that was a very accurate analysis. And to kind of ground this for the audience, because Major Lowrey makes a lot of analogies that were helpful for me, because cyberspace, it's this very abstract idea. It doesn't, physically exist. You can't touch cyberspace. You can't hold it. For me, this idea of imposing a cost on an attacker, it's something everyone intuitively understands and you see, right? It's like, imagine a country or a town where you didn't arrest criminals and they could continuously try to rob, steal, kill, do whatever they want to do, and there's no consequence. Well, of course, what you would expect is more robbing, more crime, more, all of that stuff you don't want going on, because there's no harm for doing so. There's no risk if you're an attacker. And so applying that framework to property in cyberspace, you want property, or whether it's, an asset like Bitcoin, or it's intellectual property, data you have on your website, on your hard drive, whatever there is, you want to impose a cost on attackers trying to get to that property. It doesn't matter that it's, a digital realm versus a physical realm. And so it's really interesting that Major Lowrey brings this up. So you said this is how you actually got into Bitcoin, right? You didn't approach it from the financial lens at all?
No. It's an interesting story, and you just tapped on some very key parts here as well. So I was interested in Space Force. I was in the military. I was deployed to Afghanistan. When they created a fifth branch of the military, I kind of thought it was a big deal. And I had just very basic questions. What do their uniforms look like? What do they do? Are they shooting space lasers in outer space? And I happened to stumble upon this MIT thesis, and it had this fun name, Softwar, or interesting name with a fun little caveat, the novel theory on power projection and the national strategic significance of Bitcoin. When you combine that being an MIT thesis, a Space Force major, and this title, it's a compelling title to want to read. That's what got me into it. Major Lowrey, I think what really hit me was like page 2 or page 3. He spoke very honestly, and he asked a very simple posed a very simple statement. There are 2 reasons people aren't in Bitcoin. Either they don't understand it, or they're angry they didn't get in earlier. And that hit me really hard. Literally, this book, I thought it was going to be a fun read, became like something very impactful. I put the book down and I had to really reassess. 2015, I was about to buy 10 Bitcoin. It was at $600 a coin. I couldn't get the ID to scan through Coinbase, and I got a little frustrated. I let my business partner talk me out of it. It skyrocketed. I never bought it. And I was angry at it. So when he said that, it really caught my attention, and I dove into it. You're right. Cybersecurity and cyberspace is a very abstract place. When you introduce a cost, it creates an entirely different experience. I'm not sure if anyone is familiar with Luke Broyles. I really like him. I like to call him the Jason Lowrey of the finance world. He had an interesting statement around the same time I was reading this, that society today will have more in common with society 2,000 years in the past than we will with society 100 years in the future, because we are going more digital. So if we're going more digital, we need to protect ourselves. And this is going to start to introduce a new category within cyberspace, or within cybersecurity, which I think is emerging as a title of cyber deterrence. And regular people are going to be able to eventually use this kind of stuff to protect their own data, whether they're on networks or whether it's just storing their own confidential information. Businesses are going to be able to use this to impose cost on people. And I think that Jason was taking us down that rabbit hole of what's going on in cyberspace and the sheer lack of deterrent that's occurring.
Yeah, I really appreciate hearing your kind of Bitcoin origin story, because I vividly remember when Major Lowrey first kind of popped onto the Bitcoin scene. He like went on Pomp Show and he held up a gun and was talking about like Bitcoin is warfare. And a lot of people were mocking him and saying like, this is a terrible way you're going to drive people away from Bitcoin, but had the exact opposite effect on you. It literally brought new people into the space.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that too. So, okay, My background was not in cybersecurity. I was like everyone else. It's an industry I didn't really like. It's an intimidating industry. If I work in a company and I interact with the cybersecurity professionals, typically I walk away feeling small or like I'm doing something wrong with just logging in. Yet I can't ever understand why. But I read this thesis and it called out a problem in the industry. He never quite said how, but it had my attention, and I kept going back over this thesis, reading it multiple times, watching his video. What did I miss? Then I eventually said, I got to get my life back, and I came up with this incredibly simple analogy just so that I could understand the book. I said, let me imagine that there's a crime spree occurring and that criminals are running around with a duffel bag filled with every garage door opener conceivable. And they're opening garage doors at will. All it's costing them is the time to match one of the openers with the signal of the garage they're in front of. Otherwise, they're in and they're emptying them out. No one can stop them. Based on what Major Lowrey is saying, if I wanted to apply these principles, he's saying that I could put a Bitcoin Lightning wallet in my house. I could disable my garage door opener, and then I could reprogram it so it would only activate to receive a signal after I had sent some denomination of Bitcoin to my house wallet. Now, if you back up, if I own the house, if I own the wallet, and if I own the Bitcoin, this really costs me nothing. I am just moving Bitcoin around. Now, if one of those criminals come up and they start clicking your garage door opener, they're going to theoretically be greeted with an invoice saying, no, you need to pay to execute that operation. When I came up with that analogy, all of a sudden things became clear. I said, oh, okay, anyone that's in cyberspace or cybersecurity, anyone that's in Bitcoin, this is obvious to them because I'm not in the industry. So now I just wanted to talk to people about it. Then I went to my first Bitcoin meetup. I was shocked. I was shocked. No one wanted to talk to me about it. Everyone got locked on the fact that he called Bitcoin a weapon system, and they missed what he was really talking about. And so when I step back, I'm like, my God, no one's thinking about this in the Bitcoin industry. So then I went to cybersecurity people. They just laughed me out of the room thinking, why would you ever use a quote unquote cryptocurrency? Then I started to realize, okay, I think there's something to this. No one's doing it. And let me give it a whirl.
Awesome. So that sets us up perfectly because you're basically describing your company off LN. And the biggest criticism I've heard of Softwar in the Bitcoin world is there's no practical applications. Like, it's a fun idea, but the Bitcoin blockchain, proof of work, and the miners, it can only be used to defend BTC, the native currency. It can't be used to, impose a cost on any other sort of attack in cyberspace. You have created a product where you are imposing a physical cost onto attackers. So, stripping the garage door analogy aside, which I loved, and that was a fantastic way of explaining it. Can you talk about AuthLN and how this works, like, specifically, and who, like, what sort of businesses or users might benefit from your product? The world's biggest Bitcoin conference, taking place in Las Vegas, Nevada, is right around the corner, and Blockware is celebrating in a big way. We are giving away a free hosted Bitcoin miner worth $6,000. Entering for a chance to win is super easy. All you have to do is head to the Blockware Marketplace and purchase any miner on our marketplace. Blockware Marketplace makes Bitcoin mining easy and accessible to everyone. All of the machines for sale on our marketplace are already hosted and online at one of our world-class data centers with access to the most competitive electricity rates in the world. When you purchase a miner here, you'll begin hashing as soon as your payment is confirmed on chain. This means you have access to competitive Bitcoin mining hardware, competitive electricity rates, and there's no time between when you purchase the miner and when you begin earning Bitcoin. This is hands down the best way to get started with Bitcoin mining. You don't have to go out and build your own data center, and you don't have to handle any of the operations yourself. You simply purchase a miner and begin earning Bitcoin right away. And the best part is if you use the code Vegas25, you'll get $50 off every miner you purchase between now and the end of the Bitcoin conference. To get started, go to marketplace.blockwaresolutions.com. Again, that's marketplace.blockwaresolutions.com. And if you want to speak to someone directly to have more of your questions answered and learn more about Blockware and Bitcoin mining, we are offering free 30-minute consultations with our Bitcoin mining experts. You can sign up for a free consultation by going to mining.blockwaresolutions.com/consult. Again, for a free 30-minute consultation with a Bitcoin mining professional, go to mining.blockwaresolutions.com/consult.
Yeah. So it's going to expand, right? We have to start with an initial product. Our initial product is focusing on the foundation of authentication. So within the whole tech stack, we're focused at the application layer, how you're logging in. Currently, there are varying solutions, passwordless, one-time passwords, multi-factor authentication, etc. We're targeting just the basics for multi-factor authentication with a slight twist. A user within a company will sign up with us. We're going to pool the Bitcoin on a node for them. They're by default, we're going to leverage their internal systems to allow users to have access rights to draw from that pool, never actually obtaining ownership of it, but utilizing it so that company employees aren't bringing their own Bitcoin initially. We don't live in that world yet. A user will log in as normal. But there's two paths. Before they log in, they'll click the login button. They'll be greeted with an invoice. If they're an approved user, they have our app. They're going to authorize the payment to that invoice, and then they're going to proceed to log in as normal, whether that's SSO, whether that's not using SSO, username and password, or passwordless solution, etc. On the inverse, we got to go to big tech. So a company will bridge into something like a HubSpot or a GitHub, etc. They're going to log in. We'll follow their procedures where they will do their SSO login, and then they'll be greeted with an invoice. Then they will authenticate in. It, in essence, is replacing the multi-factor authentication initially. However, it's not the most sexy thing to start off with, but it's foundational. And if you look at the types of hacks that have occurred, it really involves social engineering, compromised credentials, MFA fatigue. So if you tweak this solution slightly, where an invoice is prompted first before any activity happens, you start to address MFA fatigue. If you're using an actual value, a hacker is going to have to risk value before they're even able to proceed. And then because that value is not being sent to a device, you're removing the effects of man-in-the-middle attacks. So it starts to address a lot of foundational aspects of authentication at the application layer, and gives us a foundation to start to build it and create these more modern types of solutions that companies are using to authenticate in. That said, we have a couple letters of intent signed. We're preparing to do some pilot tests. We're gearing up towards managed service providers. We have a few Bitcoin companies that are on board, and we're going to release a solution to them. In essence, if you're a node provider, that the end users can adopt as their own solution to log into their node for additional security. Mining companies might be a great one. Startups, mid-sized companies, and then eventually will appear into the enterprise industry.
Gotcha. That's really exciting. So for myself, because I'm no cybersecurity expert, and I assume most of the audience probably is not either, the way this would work is anytime I want to log into whatever account, a Bitcoin exchange or an email, whatever it is, I have to send sats over Lightning to attempt that. So an attacker, if they're trying to brute force with 1,000 different login attempts, they're having to pay sats every time, and the cost is going to ramp up pretty quickly for them.
Correct. Yeah. Sorry. I get in the weeds because I'm in it so much. Yes. In essence, we are using a hold invoice. So you're being greeted with an invoice. You are releasing Bitcoin to satisfy that hold invoice. We're looking for the factors from your password, your login credentials. Were you successful in logging in? Did the additional factors that we put in, where the payment originated, et cetera, does all that check out? If so, the invoice is canceled, Bitcoin is returned to the user, and you're logging in as normal. If you're on the outside and you're not hitting those factors, the Bitcoin invoice is executed and your Bitcoin is now captured. The situation that I was describing was more not for the individual initially, it's for the company. And if you're an enterprise organization, you're guarding your internal infrastructure. You have employees that need to log into that infrastructure. So we had to take care of that. I think the scenario in which you're discussing is if you are an individual, if you are a Bitcoiner and you want to fund your own security solution and use that to log in, we do have a solution for that. It's just not the immediate focus for how we're going to market.
Yeah.
We will offer that to Bitcoin companies to do for their self.
That makes sense. Yeah, off as a B2B product, and then if the business wants to implement it for their users as well. That makes a lot of sense. One thing I thought about with this is on this video, and every video I post on this channel, there are 100 fake bot comments with, scams, just like total. It's annoying because I have to go through and manually delete them so I can see the real comments. Like people watching, if you leave a comment, I'm trying to see the real ones and respond to them as fast as I can. But could something like this be used to fix that, where to leave a comment, you have to, share a few sats, where for the average real commenter, no problem. But for the bot farms, it's going to, be quite the issue.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm trying to indicate, that when you introduce a cost to things in cyberspace, you're starting at the foundation, and it opens up an entire new world, a new category of different solutions that can be applied. Yes, you can do that for comments. Another solution that we are working on, we think in the future, users are not going to create their own passwords. They're either going to buy them or they're going to lease them. Passwords are going to have value. The hold invoice, you would satisfy that and the hold invoice would stay there for your duration. So if you are a bot and you're logging into something like X or LinkedIn and you're doing malicious activity, networks in the future will no longer just block your account, suspend you, whatever. They're just simply going to end your session, take your value, and invite you right back in. But now you have to buy another one. This should start to be a self-correcting behavior over time.
Right. It's almost like a deposit to use the platform. You deposit sats, and then if you're a scammer or a bot, you lose that deposit.
That is correct. Now, networks do have a ways to go in defining what their terms of service are. We clearly know that bots are a problem. Proof of human is a problem. So that's an easy one for right there.
Yeah. How do you think this plays out with AI accelerating as fast as it is? Because I'll be honest, like a lot of the AI conversations bore me to death because I think it's kind of overhyped, but it's clear it's progressing very quickly, right? The videos I see created by AI now versus 2 years ago are night and day. So could this be used as a way to, verify that, at Joe Rogan is the real Joe Rogan, or you see a clip and this is legitimate? Is there any application there to kind of defend against, rampant fraud that's increasing due to AI and the ability to fake who you are?
Yeah. And I invite some smarter folks than me to work on these problems. I think MicroStrategy unveiled their DID solution, their decentralized identity solution, which created an orange checkmark kind of service. I think they ran into the powers that be and decided, we need to go another direction. But I'm friends with the engineers. I'm friends with people that followed that crowd, and there are such things as decentralized ID solutions. It is just a matter of thrusting this industry forward. And I think you will see a lot of types of solutions like that start to blossom. I will also tell you that not all costs are created equally. So when you're thinking in the term of deterring AI, Bitcoin is a beautiful case because no one can control it and it has digital scarcity. So I like to always think of Skynet, right? That rogue AI. If we're talking about AI, I think we have to admit that we are flirting with a potential consciousness that is being created. In the event that consciousness actually takes hold and is able to replicate, it's an abstract sci-fi idea, but it is something that must be considered. you could potentially constrain that entity based on having access to this digital resource. This starts to bring me into what is Bitcoin, and it's the most fascinating thing I've ever seen in my life. I'm just enthralled by it. It started with wanting to be a part of it, wanting to serve it, and here we are now with AuthLN and the product we're getting ready to unveil.
Well, yeah, I mean, we are headed into a crazy world, and I for one am thankful we have Bitcoin for a multitude of reasons. I want to kind of shift gears now to less abstract and more, what's going on in the world, because a core part of the software thesis is nation states competing against each other. And I think a lot of the trade war and tariff stuff going on may have accelerated the need for a Bitcoin from a financial sense, right? And countries don't want to hold treasuries as the reserve asset, and they would rather hold maybe a neutral commodity like gold or Bitcoin. How do you foresee this nation state level Bitcoin adoption taking place? And do you think we're on the cusp of kind of a huge shakeup in that regard?
Yeah. So we have the Bitcoin strategic reserve that has been passed. I think that's a huge thing. I don't know if we're doing anything with it now. That's definitely a step one. You see the other countries starting to do that. You bring in the fact where you have a strategic reserve and you can utilize it to guard your digital resources. I think that starts to make a case for why you stockpile. And then you have the financial component as well. I think it will start to play off something like that. You have these states that are doing their Bitcoin funds that they're securing for the state. If you can start at that level and you can say, okay, you have infrastructure, you've made a strategic financial investment for these reasons. Did you know now that you can use that to guard your systems? I think that's how you start to get to the adoption. In the latest Senate Armed Forces hearing, there was an exchange between Senator King of Maine and General Hartman of U.S. Cyber Command. It was pretty much a advertisement for Softwar, saying, General, in every single armed force that we have, there is a deterrent. In cyberspace, there is no deterrent. An adversary, it doesn't cost them anything to penetrate. What are you going to do about it? I'm sure Jason heard it, and I'm sure Jason's already working on that. When you get to that level of the nation state stuff, I think it starts to surpass some of the things I'm thinking about and go into the realms that he is thinking about. But ultimately, that's what I think. I think it's a financial decision initially, something of passing a bill, making an effort. And then if you can utilize that as a utility within your own society, I think that's where the wars start to happen, because now it's a resource.
Right. That makes sense. And Bitcoin's so fascinating because it touches so many different domains. Everyone focuses on the financial side of it, but I think you've done a good job today articulating the cybersecurity aspect of Bitcoin. And that's interesting about the senator, that conversation you referenced. I didn't hear about that, but it makes me think Major Lowrey has more pull and influence than people in the Bitcoin community probably give him credit for. Because there's no way higher ups in the Space Force haven't heard his idea and at least given it some serious consideration.
He is the deputy director of technology and innovation for Air Force. I know he made some waves. I think part of that is what bothered me. As someone who is a veteran, I went to war. I know what it's like to be in the military, to see someone in his position, to take the risk that he did, and it was a risk. When you're in the military, they want people to conform. They don't want you to think outside of the box. But how are you going to evolve? How are you going to innovate, especially in today's world? It's chaos right now, right? Chaos breeds a lot of opportunity. You need a leader like Major Lowrey to step up and say that, to take the lead. So to see everyone attacking him the way they did, I think that really moved me internally. It bothered me, and I wanted to do something about it. And so that, I think, was the initial spark to get me going with AuthLN.
Yeah, that was well said. I mean, he absolutely took career risk for the sake of Bitcoin, for the sake of the United States of America, clearly. So I'm a big fan. But Mike, I really appreciate you coming on. I'm excited to see what you're building. Is there anything you want to plug, anywhere you want to send the audience before we wrap up?
Yeah, you can go check out our website at offln.com. If you are a business and you are interested in doing a pilot test, we would love to hear you. Just fill out the contact form. I will personally get in contact with you. We are initiating this new industry and we're looking for friendly partners specifically in the mining space. Anything to do with technology. If you're open to it, we want to introduce this new form of multi-factor authentication to keep the hackers away.
Awesome. We'll have a link to that in the description. So thank you, Mike. Appreciate you coming on the show.